everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for our current episode of Tech Safe, brought to you here by WCCA TV in Worcester, Massachusetts. Thank you so much to our friends here at the studio. You, as a cable station, are really filling such an important void today where citizens can have their important messages brought out without any filtering through the mainstream media. So we're very grateful to be with you here today. And I am so honored to introduce our next guest. Her name is Dr. Holly Groh, and she is an ophthalmologist who has made some incredible inroads in educating, well, first researching the impacts of today's technology on the eyes and the brain of children and adults. And also will share with you what she's done with that knowledge in coordinating efforts with other physicians and legislation they've actually gotten passed in Louisiana. So welcome, Holly. Thank you so very much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on the show.
All right. So tell us, how did you first learn that there are biological effects from today's technology?
Cell phones as a physician in our area. And I noticed that when I held it to my head, I had a lot of heat. We had the big ones at that point. This would have been in the early 90s, the big, huge phones. And also, I didn't feel really well on it. I didn't quite know what was going on, but I kind of tucked that into my knowledge. And then in the of screens about 21 years ago, and then fast forward, was going to middle school, and so she's now 25, and the kids in sixth grade at this middle school high functioning group, where I was noticing as I would pick her up that they were having these cell phones all over their body. That was a big concern. We raised our 4 kids without screens. I frequently would do lectures about how to set up your house. And so all of a sudden to go to this school where there were kids being rewarded and given cell phones for good grades, and it was kind of just this avalanche that started of looking at these kids and thinking there's got to be some cellular level. So as a mom and somebody that had been, I taught at Tulane University when I was younger, before kids, had seen research. I knew that research can go the way that the researcher wants it to. So what I decided to do was start looking for studies around the world. And I was looking for tumor increases because I thought, well, we'll start with that. Where are these kids, and where are people holding the cell phones, and what's happening on a cellular level? I couldn't believe what I was finding, that the tumors were up as I went down the body on where would a child or a person tuck their phone. And then most remarkably too, at this, I found later that the sperm, which is a fast changing cell line, it was destructive to sperm and causing infertility. So those were kind of flags to me that this is going on. Then I was like, okay, who's protecting the kids? And I couldn't find that, and that was disillusioning to me. Later on, and even now, the American Academy of Pediatrics has no guidelines in regards to digital devices. They have guidelines on internet safety, but none on the bodily harm that cause. So anyway, that's how I got started, was being concerned for the kids, and then finding this avalanche of data that wasn't getting out there.
Right. And so being an ophthalmologist, you shared with me that there's quite a bit of research that talks about the impact on the retina and the brain. Can you talk us through your findings there?
Yes. So there's currently an epidemic of myopia. So I would lecture schools on the effects of what was going on with the digital devices, because it wasn't just the radio. In my area, it was an extreme amount of data that it was damaging the eyes and brain. So, and in the last couple of years, that's been in a pressure cooker, and you could just see the damage on occurrence just skyrocket. So there's an epidemic of myopia. It's not just in the United States, it's around the world on any giving kids devices, or where they're able to have devices. Interestingly, of course, is that the societies that don't have as much technology, there it's not being seen in those areas. There's an epidemic of obesity. There's a disruption of with the blue light. There's disruption of the sleep cycles and disruption of the retina. And that is alarming. Kids have no filter like adults do with some discoloration of their lens. So the blue light comes straight through the cornea, which is the first membrane, and into the lens and back to the retina, which is like the film of the camera. The blue light is destructive to the retina. And so that's alarming. We just got a scan by we have an optometrist on our medical team, and I could go into the medical team later, but our 20-year-old son showed damage with his retina. I have damage apparently with mine, and she has a scan. It's the only scan I've heard of that I know of anybody taking measurements. So it's not knowledge that's known. She's seen a lot of damage in young people, which is alarming. My area was corneal. When I was doing surgery, corneal and the front of the eye. What happens when we look at a screen is we open our eyes and we don't blink as much. Corneal dry eye disease is occurring in young people. There are the neurologic damages to their kids are not tracking like they normally would, because you think your screen with micro movements. There are involuntary movements happening with, and not just the eye, but for instance, if you have the kids in the video game, the sympathetic overload, they're having twitches and involuntary movements. Young kids are having the inability to coordinate because you're no longer using your fingers and learning that visual system of reach, how much pressure to put. They're having trouble receiving a paintbrush and young children. And then our internal GPS is being affected because we're not using it, and that's adults and kids. And then of course, the inability to look at a person's face and body, interpret the facial and body language. And then in the area of the radiation, you have children that, I watched this during the pandemic with my kids, my own kids, and then their friends, where they take the laptop, put it on their lap. The boys bring their legs together, which heats the testes already, 1 degree centigrade. Now you've put the laptop on their abdomen, so you're now irradiating the testes or the ovaries, and we only get one set of eggs from the beginning. So it's very important for girls too. And then often you would see kids, kind of bent over the screen. So that radiation to the frontal lobes and the eye, and long term, we don't know what's going to happen with that with children. And then, of course, there's all the musculoskeletal discomfort and then the addiction to screens. And I will say one other thing: that blue light not only affects the eye and the retina, but I've seen a study that girls are actually going through earlier puberty, maybe in part because of the blue light. I mean, it's that restorative sleep is very important to kids' developing bodies. So that's it in a nutshell. That's why we voted for the legislation.
Yeah, well, I so respect the way your mind works because you know there's a problem there and you've done the deep dive into the science and you're so great with synthesizing that so that we can understand it better. You use the term myopia. Can you describe what myopia is?
The myopia is nearsightedness. Our natural state of the eye is to look out into infinity, and that puts the eye in a spherical shape. And we are set up to look out in the distance. When you the child's eyes in, you've now, with muscles that move the eye, you're putting pressure and elongates the eye. That makes it where a child will still see well up close, will no longer see in the distance. So when I was a kid and you played capture the flag or kick the can, and you told your friend, run over there, and you were continually using not just your vision at infinity, but also your peripheral vision. You were using as loss with the peripheral vision. So kids are not getting that blur that we should get where you're aware of what's going on. That bringing the eye to the small inches from their face is causing myopia. And the antidote is, of course, to get children outside for more than 2 hours a day, get them off the screens. I mean, when you think of our mothers and our grandmothers, like my grandmother used to tell us to get outside and get in her work. We went on our bikes all after school. We were using our own GPS, our vision, as it should be. Acting. Also, you knock on somebody's door, you don't have it planned that Tommy's home. You go and say to Tommy's mom, could Tommy come out and play? That we're missing. And that needs to be restarted. The fractals, those little patterns that are in trees and grass, repeated patterns, those are so good. And we are made to rotate with the sun, with the pinks and oranges in the morning, the blue spectrum in the afternoon, and then the pink and orange evening, and the dark at night. We cannot get away from it. And that blue light of the screen is the strongest secondary, the intensity second to the sun, but also in the amount of blue spectrum and the amount of time, the amount of time is just egregious that people are on them. So anyway.
Yeah, well, thank you for explaining that. I know, I'm in front of my computer for much of the day, and sometimes I just feel like my eyes are doing this, right?
Right.
So what can we do? One, reduce the amount of time, obviously, right? But when we have to be in front of a screen for work or for certain school assignments, if we still go down that path, what can we do to protect our eyes better than just being right in front of a screen?
And I didn't mention this, but this was really important that I want to tell your listeners and you. One of the guidelines that we have is that the manufacturer's warnings be given to each person so that that the laptop does not go on your lap. The cell phone does not go on your body and set it away from your body. And the readings that I have done with the electromagnetic field are still very high on the table, but you set it on the table. You want to have it where your lid fissure, the opening of your eye, is a little bit lower so that you don't have the wide aperture. You set your screen into the nighttime mode so that you have less blue light, more in the orange spectrum, less intensity. And then be aware, tell yourself and I have to do this with myself. I'm only going to be on it for such and such a time. And these are the things I'm going to do so that you're intentional and take breaks. The man that started the 20-20-20 rule, I don't know if you've heard that. He told me, I called him, and he said he actually made that up. So it's, you're taking, every 20 minutes, you're getting up, looking out at 20 feet. And he said he couldn't tell. He kept trying to tell people, I've made it up. It's not true. I am sure we need lots of breaks. Go look out into the distance. I have our kids and myself, before anybody's on a screen, and I tell them, please go look outside at the natural world and the spectrum there. Let's see, what did I want to tell you about that?
And then what about foods that are good for our eye health?
So dark leafy greens are very good. The vegetables of intense color. There's a supplement for the macula that has lutein. So that's in egg yolks. So lutein, zeaxanthin, and mesozeaxanthin. So those are all good for the back of the eye. The optometrist and her name is Susan Jong, that I think so highly of, who's the only board certified optometrist in our state, is seeing reversal of the pigmentary loss with in her patients, where she starts them on this supplement. It's called MacuHealth. So it is possible to help your eyes, and try to educate your kids. I find it's a humbling job. I'm trying all the time to, we have 4 young adults to teenagers. I treat all their friends like they're in any kid I'll treat like they're in my family. So I try to educate all of them on this is, I know you don't want to hear it, but this is what you might want to. And I figure I've always felt like I was planting seeds. I might be putting those seeds out there, but perhaps it'll click later on.
Yeah, and I love it. You shared with me that when the kids' friends come over to the house, you have a basket and you just say, okay, everybody, digital devices go in the basket, and you guys get to just do what kids do and hang out with one another and be creative and, play games, real games, not video games. And
right. Yes.
Yeah.
And we've kind of set up our house. I mean, we try. It's as they get older, it's
I know. I have young adult children now too, and mine were, in their mid-teens when I first fell down the rabbit hole with this issue, and it's not easy, and we get it, and we all do our best, and kids just want to be just like their peers. We're pack animals, right? And if you distinguish yourself from the pack, then you become prey. That's kind of how nature works. So kids want to be just like their friends. They want to wear the same kind of clothes oftentimes. They want to, and so to have to be the parent who figures out this wireless issue, and of course we want to protect our children, it's very difficult. But I will tell you that after my daughter, my oldest daughter, moved out and got her first apartment, she was like, Mom, don't talk to my roommates about this, because she didn't know them. She answered an ad and moved in with them. And I came with my meter and helped her move in, and I just wanted assurances that her head wasn't going to be right next to a smart meter or some other transmitting device. By the time she got her second apartment, she called me up and says, hey, Mom, will you bring your meter over? When she got her first car, she said, hey, Mom, will you come car shopping with me and bring your meter? So as you plant these seeds, folks, just know that you are the voice in your children's head, and it's your job to be that voice. And it doesn't fall on deaf ears. They may be giving you the eyeball rolls at the time, but they know you're right. It's just hard to go against the tide when the industry's been so effective at pushing all Wi-Fi all the time. So hang in there, parents. So many good things happen in our world because parents say, wait a minute, what? and then they go and they fix it. So I'm so inspired by the work I've just recently learned that you did with the Louisiana legislature. Can you tell us, we've got about 8 minutes left, and I would just love to hear how you got onto that journey, how you engaged other physicians, and what ultimately the Louisiana legislature did.
So I would give to schools about the effects of the digital devices, and they would get all pumped. This is from grade school, preschool, grade schools, and up to high schools. And the ones in the public school system particularly would get super excited about it and then tell me, there's nothing we can do because we have to do it with the screens. So I thought, well, what the heck? I'm going to look up if I can help with the law. I was fortunate enough to visit with and guided by the woman who passed the first law in the country, Cindy.
Oh, I think that froze. Was it Cindy Eckhart?
Eckhart, yes, in Maryland. And she passed the first law, and there are two more after that, and then ours is the fourth. And if you look at her law, it's been quite a bit. The ed tech industry got a seat at the table, and she was determined to at least get something on the books. And I'm so grateful that she did. And each consecutive law gets better. Ours currently is the best in the nation. It should be shouted via the media, but as you know.
All right, shout. Tell us what you want people to know about the law you passed and what ensued.
Okay. So we have, I'll just briefly go through, I put together a medical expert team, cardiologists specializing in exercise echocardiograms, these are university neurologists who specialize in headaches, a pediatrician, master's in public health, pediatrician, sleep specialist, orthopedic surgeon, optometrist that I mentioned. I was a corneal surgeon, and so an ophthalmologist, which is the medical doctor, surgeon, and no longer surgeon after kids. And then we have the a mom who's triple boarded in pulmonary ICU and lifestyle medicine. So we came together. We had teenagers that had beautiful artwork. The first go around, it almost died. That's without the panel. It was study, and there, of course, there are so many studies on the myopia with the kids and the effects. So we then my representative, Amy Adato Freeman, fortunately wanted to pick it up again, and this time it passed. This time I had the panel with me and the parents and teenagers with their artwork showing what it felt like to be on the screen during the live, etc. And they're very elegant speakers. And we passed the House, the Senate unanimously, and the governor signed it. Our bill calls for us working, the medical experts working with the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, Louisiana Department of Education, and coming together to get guidelines. And that's we've put together guidelines. So there was some compromise sometimes on some of it, and the idea is for us to meet yearly. Now the news has not gotten out on it, so I understand that now it will be printed in the newsletters of the private parochial homes newsletters, so that the information will go out. It was buried in the superintendent's page 4 when it first came initially out. So I'm hoping that parents will be able to see it, know it, and teach it to their kids. I'm also hopeful that if anybody else in other states wants it, I'm happy to, that they take whatever we have and build on it.
Yeah. So what do your guidelines say? If you could say the top 5 things that are in your guidelines, what would we learn?
Okay. one of the top ones is that the manufacturer, when a school-issued device is given to a child, that the parents have the manufacturer's recommendations, so that it's not on their laps, it's on a table. Then we go into we have the orthopedic recommendations, the eye recommendations that I told you about. We even have AirPods, as you know, those are so high in radiation, trying to tell them to please have corded at appropriate levels, because it causes ear, nerve damage too. So I think those would be my top. Were those 5?
Yeah, that's amazing. I'll tell you, when we became the first in the United States to even have this little sign, best practices for mobile devices, in our public schools here in Ashland, Massachusetts, it was a very challenging thing to do. I also happened to work for the schools at that time, and I was managing the updates to our employee handbook. So we made sure that our best practices went into the employee handbook, and then every year on the first day back to school for the teachers, they get all their physical restraint training, their anti-bullying, mandated reporter, and so now this is also part of the training that goes on in our schools. So you might be able to have that conversation with your schools too, to say, it's so great we have these guidelines. How do we make sure they're chaperoned into the common knowledge base every single school year? So if there's anything I can help with on that, just give us a shout and let us know. So we've got about a minute left, Dr. Groh. Is there anything else you wanted our listeners today to know?
Yes, I would.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I would encourage, if there are any pediatricians listening, or health family practitioners, or you're going to see your family health, that they stand up, and that we stand up, the parents too, on this is what's going on. Communications Commission does not have a health unit. The American Academy of Pediatrics has not put out guidelines. Please, would you start educating, because it's a landslide of what's going on with kids' eyes, brains, mental health we didn't get into. But please, talk to your friends, tell them you want to even just practically set up play dates where their kids are phone free, and don't be ashamed of it. We have kids that come back and tell us that they would so appreciate, they're older now in their 20s, that they appreciate that time. So of being at our house with no cell phones. So please don't, just shout out and with love and light as much as you can to your health practitioners, and let them know that you feel like this should be an issue that we all take care of for kids.
Excellent. So when we put this video out, I'll download it to my YouTube channel, and we'll include links to some of the studies that you have shared